Hi, welcome back. I'm really excited for you to be here today. We are going to dig into a topic that is something that I've been having so many conversations about lately. You know, there's a specific kind of confusion that really starts to come up when we're in our 20s. It's not loud and it doesn't always have to be really dramatic. It can kind of just be this low hum in the background of our lives where something just feels a little off. Where we're kind of just wondering, is this it? Is this what it's supposed to feel like? Or just wondering and feeling like this doesn't quite fit anymore. And for a long time when I was feeling this way, I felt like I must be doing something wrong. But now I look back at this feeling and this phase of my life and I see it entirely different now. Today, I want to talk about career confusion, but not from the angle of your job needs to be your passion project, more from the lens of identity. Who do you want to be? What do you want your life to be like? And from what's really going on underneath these feelings of confusion, or like something just isn't quite the right fit anymore. I specifically remember being in my cubicle at my old job. I was doing whatever I was working on at the time, something on the computer. I just was looking around me and there was a lot of like buzz going on in the office, people working together on projects at their cubicles and talking, and I was just thinking to myself, is this it? Is this how I'm supposed to feel about my job forever? Is this just, I'm just supposed to do this for the next 40 or 50 years of my career? And it wasn't like there was something totally wrong. Everything looked good on paper. It was a good, stable job, good income. I got to live in the place that I wanted to live. And like I said, it all looked fine on paper, but something was just feeling a little bit off. I remember feeling like something just feels off, but I'm supposed to just be grateful for this job and I should just be grateful for where I'm at. And maybe this is just part of being an adult and maybe everyone around me feels this way and this is just normal and I just need to like get used to the fact that maybe work is supposed to feel this way and life isn't supposed to feel grand and exciting. And these were some of the things that was kind of running through my mind because nothing was technically wrong. I had a job, I had income, I had a paycheck coming in. I was on this track to grow my career and be able to sustain the life that I wanted and support myself and my future family. But internally, something just felt very off. And I didn't know if that meant that I was just ungrateful and I thought that the grass was greener on the other side, or if this was something I should actually listen to. I was feeling very restless with where I was at. Like I said, I was struggling with feeling like maybe I was just being ungrateful for where I was at and I just needed to be more grateful for the job I had and what I was able to do in this job, and I should just be grateful for the income that I have. I was feeling somehow behind in my life and like I should have by now found the job that made me feel more fulfilled or was getting me closer to the life that I actually wanted by now. I was feeling embarrassed kind of that I didn't feel clear on what I wanted. I had put in all of this work to get the degree and get these jobs and start this career that was supposed to feel really good. But now I was like, what have I done? I don't know if this is what I want to do, but I've put so much work into this. And am I supposed to just see this through even though just I have this feeling that like something is not right, something is off? I was terrified that I had picked the wrong path and now I have to go back on all of that work and try to figure out what the right path for me is. And I like idolized these women I could see in my life who seemed to be in jobs that lit them up more. And I'm not saying it's their passion project, but it's a job that they feel more alive in. It's bringing them more of the life that they want, more income, more time with their family, and they seem to be growing into better versions of themselves. And I felt like in my job, I was trying to fit into this box that required the parts of myself that I didn't want were having to come through in order to fit in their box. Like ugly parts of being a human. And I needed to fit inside of this box, and I didn't like that I was having to become a version of myself that I didn't like in order to succeed in this career. I believed that I should have it all figured out by now, which in hindsight is really funny to say. When you think about the entire runway of life, there are so many phases of life and opportunities to transition careers and so many things to come in my life. It's interesting that I felt like I needed to have it all figured out, but I really did feel like I at least was supposed to have my career figured out and be on the path to the career that I wanted for the rest of my life. I believed that if I pivoted now, that said something bad about my character. I knew that wasn't true, but there was part of me that was like, you're supposed to be able to commit to something and just see it through, work really hard, and push through something even if it doesn't feel quite right, because you made this commitment and you need to see it through. I also believe that part of this career that I had was going to mean stability for the rest of my life, and whatever sacrifice that required was part of being mature. So maybe having a little bit of a job that felt a little bit soul-sucking and like a little bit of numbing was required, and just being this version of yourself that you didn't want to be was required in order to have this career that meant stability. And I believed that this confusion around my career was probably a little bit of a lack of discipline. Like, I just wasn't doing my job effectively enough and good enough, and I just needed to be able to be the version of myself that fit into their little box even better, and then it would be better and I would feel less confused about my career, and I would just be able to be this version that I needed to be and be really disciplined and not be overthinking things so much. I was so afraid that if I changed paths, I was going to disappoint my parents. I was going to disappoint people around me who really cared about me. I was going to disappoint coworkers who had become really good friends. I was afraid that I was going to disappoint the previous version of myself, the 16-year-old me who committed to being a chemical engineer because she worked so hard to earn her degree and to get these jobs. She worked so hard, and I was terrified of disappointing her. I was terrified of disappointing myself and my future self, because I was just thinking, if I can just stick to this career, then I will be able to have the life that I want eventually. But that's the kicker, right? Eventually. So I thought I was going to disappoint myself now and the future version of me because I didn't see this through. So I was never going to have the financial abundance and lifestyle that I wanted if I didn't stick to this career path. I was afraid of losing financial stability. So even though I felt like I was constantly chasing more money, I was in this cycle of wanting more money, and if I could just make more money, I would be more happy at this job. I was afraid of losing that stability. I contemplated leaving for a long time, but I was terrified, and I kind of felt trapped by these like golden handcuffs where, yes, you have insurance and you have like stock options and these sorts of things promised to you after a certain period of time, but you also have this income. And I had convinced myself, like, you can't actually make this money anywhere else here. Like, you should just be grateful for the money that you're making here. So I was terrified of losing this paycheck that I knew I was going to get every 2 weeks. And it was going to be the same amount every 2 weeks. I wasn't going to have to worry about if I was going to be able to make ends meet or not. I was really afraid of looking flaky and like I just quit something because it was hard, because that had never been who I was. And I was someone who would work really, really hard. And I knew that I didn't always have to be the best at things, but that working harder than the person next to me would take me further. And I wore that like a badge of honor. But that also meant I didn't know when to say when. I didn't know when quitting or leaving something was going to serve me better. I just was somebody who would push through things even when it wasn't worth it. And I was terrified of starting over because I didn't know what this meant on the other side. I didn't know what starting over meant. I didn't know what that career path looked like. And for me, the career path of being an engineer seemed pretty clear. And it seemed like there were some options, but for me, it was like you went to school, you got an internship, you got a job. Now you just go to this 8 to 5 job for the rest of your life. That path is clear, and you try to kind of climb your way up the corporate ladder. But if I left that, I was terrified of what that was going to look like. I was feeling confused because I felt like I was trying to prove something to people around me. I was trying to prove to my parents that I could do hard things and I was going to be successful. And I had built up this habit my whole life of validating myself through grades and excelling in school and my career. And I just wanted that validation from external factors. And I was continuing that in my career as well. I was trying to prove to my 16-year-old self that I was capable of doing whatever it was that I wanted to do. And so I decided when I was 16, I was going to go to school to be a chemical engineer, and I did that. I went to school, got my degree, I got an internship in Texas, and then I got my first job in oil and gas, and then I got another job in the semiconductor industry, and I was going to see this through because this was a commitment that I made when I was 16. And so I was trying to prove to her that she could do it. I was trying to prove to my current self and my future self that I was going to have my back no matter what. I was willing to sacrifice whatever I needed to for financial security. I was trying to prove to my friends around me that I had this great career and this great job that was going to lead me to the life that I wanted. And I had built so much of my identity around my career. It wasn't even that I was a very good engineer. I loved telling people I was an engineer. I loved the pride that came from that and the self-worth that came from that. It wasn't even the act of engineering and the type of work that I got to do. There was this huge disconnect between the version of myself that I wanted to be and the version of myself that I was being in order to be an engineer and to be successful in a corporate company. There was this box that they wanted me to fit in, and they were trying to shove me in there, and I was trying to fit inside this box. I was trying to change parts of myself in order to fit inside this box, but there was always this friction that I felt where I was like, gosh, I just feel like I'm becoming an uglier version of myself in order to meet these people's expectations and be this person that can be successful in this role. And it's so interesting now to think back about what I was trying to prove to myself, prove to these people, prove to my parents, prove to my friends. It's really interesting to think about that and all of the ways that showed up. And along the way, it required so much abandoning myself. And I really struggled to trust my own instincts and trust myself. I was looking for other people to validate me while I was rumbling with this confusion. As I reflect back when I was in the thick of being really confused about what I wanted out of my career, it's really interesting to think about if I was actually confused or if I was terrified of what was on the other side of that, and if my nervous system didn't feel safe enough to make that choice. And that's interesting because I know at the time in my gut, I knew that I did not want to do that for the rest of my life, but I didn't know what I was going to do. So it felt safer to stay there than it did to leave. And I didn't know what I was going to do if I left. I so badly wanted to live in the same place. And this is where my family is and my life is, and I love it here so much. And so I was terrified that leaving meant I was going to have to leave all of these other things that I loved. The predictability of the job that I was in felt more safe than what could possibly come from leaving the job and the life that I actually wanted on the other side of that. Somehow that felt more safe because it was predictable. And when I think back, I'm not so sure I was actually confused. I think underneath that feeling was a lot of fear of the uncertainty of what it meant about me if I did quit, if I did do something different, fear of what I was going to do, what my life would look like if I chose a completely different path. Underneath that confusion, I was so in my own mind and my blinders were up, and it made me feel like I couldn't see any other options for my career, and there was nothing else out there where I could make this kind of money or make good money to be able to support myself in the life that I wanted. It's amazing how when you are just so in it, you feel so stuck. I also think there was this layer of mentors that I was listening to that maybe I shouldn't have given their opinion so much weight, making me feel like there was something wrong with me for wanting something different. Again, I feel like I was so in it. It was really hard to possibly imagine that what I was feeling was okay and that it's okay to want something more. I remember like looking around when I was in that cubicle and just being like, why can't I just be happy here? Why all of these people seem to be at least tolerating it just just fine. And they all seem to be fine with how things work around here and what it takes to be successful. And they all seem to be fine with squishing themselves into this little box. Why can't I just be fine with that? And why do I need to want more for my life? Like, maybe this is enough. All of these people seem to be fine with that. And maybe there's something wrong with me and the way that I'm thinking about this job and career and what life is actually going to feel like. And I also think underneath the confusion was actually that staying in this discomfort felt more familiar than the discomfort of changing. It's kind of like when people say the evil you know is better than the evil you don't know. And I was convincing myself that the evil or the challenges that I was facing right now were better than the challenges I was going to face on the other side. And if I changed, there was going to be all of these unexpected things that were going to be far worse. And I was going to be looking back and thinking, how did I possibly think that things could be better than that? That's what I was afraid of. And I was convincing myself of that. I recently heard somebody say, making no decision is making a decision. And had I heard that a few years ago, I'm curious if it would have landed the same way or not. Because there was a lot of layers below confusion, and I was kind of using confusion to hide from some of these other things, I think. Or maybe I was just labeling all of these other things as confusion. At the time, I felt like I had stability, and it's interesting because that stability felt very tight and rigid, and like I couldn't take a deep breath, and like I had this pit in my stomach all the time because this felt soul-sucking. But I thought you had to feel those things in order to feel stability. Then when I let my brain go to expansion and what else could be possible, that felt and feels very light, open, and scary, but you have this sense of feeling alive and like you're living for more. Whereas the stability at the time for me felt soul-sucking. So pivoting careers was not so much about following my passion and doing only what lights me up and nothing else, but it was rather about thinking about this life that I actually wanted and doing more of the things that did light me up and actually allowing myself to believe that I could have a job that brought me the life I actually wanted, that felt good, helped me become the version of myself that I really wanted to be. And I also had to kind of start learning that maybe it's not a job where you're just following your passions, but it's a job where you can continue to become better versions of yourself. So I'm not saying when we have this career confusion that we should just follow our passions and we should all just have jobs that we love. I think there are people that follow their passions and have jobs that they love. I do believe that to be totally possible now. I didn't used to. Now I think that's possible. But I am saying that perhaps when we're feeling this confusion around our careers, rather than feeling like our job is supposed to bring us all of this passion, maybe we can think about like what lights us up. How can we just do a little bit more of that right now? How do we just let ourselves explore the things that do light us up, the things that we are good at and the things that we want to become better at? There were parts of me that were in conflict. There's this part of freedom versus approval. So as I was growing up, I was somebody who really liked the validation that I got from getting good grades, having my coaches tell me I was doing a good job, being what people wanted me to be. This external validation felt really good. And that continued into my career. And I think by working in this corporate job, I liked that we got annual reviews where they could tell you if they thought you were doing a good job, if you were meeting their expectations. I liked this feedback. It made me feel good about myself. This is where I got my self-worth from. This is where I got validation from. If I was being the person my boss wanted me to be, versus this freedom to validate myself, this freedom to find self-worth in other things. Those two parts, the freedom versus the validation, were really butting heads. The creativity, the creative versus the predictable parts of me were fighting for sure. I liked the control that I felt when I knew that my paycheck was the same. I knew when I had to go to work. I knew when I got to leave. I knew what time I got lunch. I knew what was coming down the pipeline. I knew what this career was going to look like for the next 40 years because this was it. That was predictable, but that was very much fighting with the creative parts of me. I wanted something where I could do more of what lights me up, where I had a little bit more creative liberty. That doesn't mean there weren't kind of some things to follow, but I didn't want things to be so predictable. Like I knew what every day of the rest of my life was going to look like going to this job. There was also this part of me, like the growth growth versus security part that were feeling at odds with each other. So I wanted to grow and become this better version of myself, but I liked the security of this job that I had. And I liked that I thought it meant stability, and I thought that I knew what I was going to have if I stayed in this job. Then there was the curiosity versus control parts of me kind of fighting each other. I was so curious about what my life could look like if I changed careers. And sometimes curiosity was used to my detriment, because I would just kept saying like, okay, how can I show up better? How can I make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing to make this job a good fit? I can't control the people around me. I can't control the culture. I can't control the environment. I can control me. So how do I get really curious about what I need to do better so that I feel proud of how I'm showing up, and then maybe it will feel better here? There was that part. There was also fighting with the control part, which is funny because there was so much control in that. I thought I could control the situation if I could control me. I was using curiosity to kind of like control the situation and try to just convince myself that if I could just be better, then that job would be a better fit. When I was feeling at the peak of my like confusion around what I wanted to do with my career, I thought clarity was going to feel bold, confident, like I knew exactly what I was going to do, what the path was going to look like. I thought it was going to be immediate and the path was going to be linear. I was going to be able to do this, make this much money, and this is what the trajectory was going to look like. But what clarity actually felt like was very quiet. It felt like I didn't know the whole path, but I did know what the next step was. The clarity started to build from making small decisions to explore some of this curiosity about what else I wanted out of my career. Just simply acknowledging that I was not happy. I wanted to do something different, but I had no idea what that was. So starting to think about, what did I like? What didn't I like? What did I want my life to look like? What did I want more of? What did I want less of? And I knew that health and wellness really lit me up. So I started kind of exploring that and what that might look like. How do I merge my two worlds? Is that a possible path? And just following those breadcrumbs. So from there, I started to think about like, okay, I know I want to do something with health and wellness, but what does that look like? And I had to start exploring, okay, what could the next possible step be? Even if I don't leave my job, even if I start doing some stuff in the meantime, what could I do? What is my next step? And I decided my next step was going to be a course. And so I was just following some of these breadcrumbs, start letting my brain go there and find possibility. Looking back now at that whole like the peak of the confusion, but the last 10 years really, I recognized that my capacity was simply expanding. My willingness to tolerate living my life like what I was seeing around me was going down. I didn't want that life. I wanted something different for myself. I realized now that my identity was just shifting. I had started building this identity from a very young age. There was a lot wrapped up into this, and I had to start letting go of some parts of myself that were so wrapped up into being an engineer. As I look back, I realized some of this confusion was me going through a bit of a grieving process of what I thought I was going to be. And I also recognized that my nervous system was really trying to recalibrate. When I would go to work, it just felt like it got hijacked. And I was just like struggling to be myself there and show up as the best version of myself because that kept me safe. And so it was interesting that I was feeling this at a nervous system level. And as I look back, I start to question, like, what if this confusion isn't really a problem? What if what we're labeling as confusion is really growth and we're growing into the version of ourselves that we want to be? What if what we think is confusion is really starting to recognize that we're misaligned with the life that we actually want? What if it's that we're getting more aware of the person that we are right now versus the person that we want to be? What if we're getting to be more aware that the lifestyle that's required inside of this career is not what we want our life to actually look like? Maybe this period of career confusion is a period of starting to build more self-trust, trusting that the way you think, what you believe, how you feel about your job is valid, and only you get to decide that. Other people's experiences experience does not validate your thoughts about your career and what you want. But it's funny for me, I was searching for that so much. I was searching for somebody else to tell me what I was feeling was normal and it was okay. And yes, it's valid. Perhaps some of this confusion, especially when you start to feel it in your nervous system, is your body's way of saying like, yep, this isn't it. There's something off here and that's okay. Let's start digging into this and unraveling it and figuring out what's underneath this. If you're here right now, if you're really feeling in the thick of this confusion around your career and your identity is feeling wrapped up into it, you're having a hard time allowing yourself to move into a new version of yourself. If you're feeling like I should just be grateful for what I have and keep pushing through this, if you're struggling to let yourself consider new possibilities, I want to offer you a few things that really helped me as I was navigating this. The first part of them is like, how do we just regulate when we're in the thick of it? Sometimes we can't change it immediately. So how do we regulate and move through it when we're in the thick of it? One thing that really helped me was walking. I had a really good friend at work and we would go on walks every single day. These walks helped me remember my worth, remember that if I wanted more, I was meant for more, and that my feelings were valid. It helped me start to expand my possibilities and think of what else might be possible. But it also just helped me regulate through what was going on. Journaling helped me a lot. It helped me work through what I was feeling, but also I would journal through some prompts around what did I want? What did I feel like I was good at? What did I want to get better at? What did it mean to be lit up by my career? What did I want out of my career? You know, I do think sometimes there are people who want their career to be more passion driven and feel more lit up. And some people really want to just go to work, do their job, and not have their career take so much of their bandwidth. Journaling and getting clear on that helped me a lot. Talking things through really helped me. There was a few people I really trusted that I talked things through with. And then the last thing that really helped me just navigate when I was in the thick of it was removing some of the urgency. So I didn't have to figure everything out tomorrow. I didn't have to have my career pivot and my career path all figured out tomorrow. I could have a long runway and all I needed to do was take the next best step. So follow the breadcrumbs and just, what's the next best thing that I need to do? Okay, let's follow that. Maybe it's just getting curious around some of the journaling. Okay, now maybe it's exploring what those things could actually look like. And maybe it was adding some things on the side of your work or having these discussions with people who are already doing it. That's what I mean by removing some of the urgency so that you don't feel like you have to overhaul your life overnight and start a new career tomorrow and have the entire path figured out. I say this because this whole journey for me took me 6 years. This did not happen overnight. And to be quite frank, I was rumbling with this heavily for 5 years. And then in the last 3 years, it was really strong and it was really consuming a lot of my mental bandwidth. And I started to get really curious about what I did want and who I was being, and started to change some of my behaviors and start considering what this might look like, what my career might look like outside of the path that I had already started. I was on that path and I got laid off. The universe forced me to make a decision. I could decide if I wanted to continue down this career path and get another job as an engineer in a corporate company that felt stable and secure, or if I wanted to completely pivot. And I chose the completely pivot. It would have been very hard for me to actually leave this job. So I get it, but I wish I had listened to some of these things sooner. And that's not to say that for everyone the right decision is changing, but I think just trusting my own intuition and trusting what I wanted and just moving forward, because life goes so quick. And I blinked and I was in that career for 6 or 7 years, and it just goes so fast. So again, sometimes this confusion phase does get drug out a lot and can last a long time. And I just want to kind of offer you that because it helps remove some of the doubt and the judgment towards ourselves. There are a few questions that really help. There are a few questions that can really help navigate some of this confusion around our career. The first one is, does this make me feel expansive or contracted? And sometimes it can be around the whole career, but it can be around parts of what you're doing, decisions that you're making, the person that you're being. You can kind of ask yourself, is what I'm doing right now making me feel expansive or contracted? Another helpful question is, am I making this decision out of fear or alignment? Is this moving me closer to the version of myself that I want to be and the life that I want? Or am I scared of making this hard decision, and so I'm hiding behind fear and I'm letting fear be in the driver's seat? Sometimes asking, who am I trying to impress, can be really helpful. If I had asked myself that, oftentimes it would have been my boss, my parents, my friends, and it rarely would have been, I'm trying trying to impress me. I'm trying to do what I want to do. And another question that really starts to unlock more possibilities is, what would I do if I wasn't scared? What would I do if I wasn't afraid of looking stupid? What would I do if I wasn't worried about what other people thought about me? If you're in your 20s or 30s and you're feeling behind or confused around your career, maybe you're not actually behind. Maybe you're evolving beyond the version of you that chose the current career path that you're on. Maybe the confusion you're feeling around your career is simply the space between the two identities, the version of yourself that chose the career path and the version of yourself that you're becoming.